They say life can change in a moment. For Charlie Benson, that moment came not with a lottery ticket, not with a phone call, and not with some miracle of fate. It came in the form of a coin, a small, seemingly insignificant 5-cent piece. A Jefferson nickel dated 2012, minted in Denver. A coin that most people wouldn't look twice at. But what Charlie discovered that cold morning in January would soon become the center of one of the biggest numismatic mysteries in U.S. history, setting off a chain reaction that would reach from small-town convenience stores to international auction houses, with collectors, investors, historians, and even federal agencies all becoming part of the unfolding drama. At 68, Charlie Benson wasn't the kind of guy who made headlines. A retired mailman from Fairview, Ohio, he lived a quiet life. His days were predictable: coffee at sunrise, a walk to the local diner for breakfast, and a few hours tending to his modest vegetable garden. He liked his routine. He didn't chase excitement, and he certainly didn't chase money. His most extravagant purchase in the past decade had been a new recliner for watching baseball in the evenings, but that morning, when he stopped by Ted's Corner Market, everything changed. He was paying for a newspaper and his usual orange soda when the cashier, a young kid named Marcus, handed him his change. The clink of coins hitting his palm was routine, he almost didn't even glance at them. But as he stepped outside, he noticed something odd. One of the coins felt heavier. Not by much, but just enough to make him pause. He stopped on the bench outside the store and held the coin up to the light. It was a 2012 D. Jefferson nickel. He'd seen thousands just like it in his lifetime. But this one looked different. There was a luster to it. The edge was cleaner, sharper. The metal had a sheen he couldn't quite place. It wasn't like the dull gray of most nickels. It almost shimmered. Charlie took it home and placed it on his kitchen table. He didn't own any fancy tools, but he had an old magnifying glass he used to read the crossword puzzle in the local paper. He examined the coin for scratches or markings. None. In fact, it looked almost untouched, as if it had never circulated. Curiosity got the better of him, and he drove into town to visit Rick Sloman, who ran a small coin and stamp shop that mostly sold to hobbyists and kids starting their first collections. Charlie explained how he'd found the coin, and Rick, out of politeness more than belief, offered to take a look. The moment Rick placed the coin on his digital scale, the mood in the shop shifted. The readout blinked: 6.1 grams. A normal nickel should weigh 5.0 grams. He ran a magnet over it, no reaction. He pulled out a handheld XRF analyzer and scanned the coin. "This isn't copper nickel," Rick said, his voice tight. "It's palladium, with traces of silver." That didn't make sense. There had never been a palladium Jefferson nickel. Not officially. Rick called a friend at the ANA, American Numismatic Association, who advised him to secure the coin immediately and not to talk to the media. But that cat was already halfway out of the bag. Word spread like wildfire. Within days, Charlie's home was surrounded by reporters and curiosity seekers. National news picked up the story: retired mailman finds $5 nickel worth millions. Coin collectors began digging through their change drawers. Pawn shops saw an influx of people bringing in 2012 nickels. Social media exploded with theories, hoaxes, and wild speculation. Was it a secret government minting? A rare error coin? A test for a new alloy the mint never approved? Then came the confirmation that changed everything. The U.S. Mint, after initially stonewalling the press, acknowledged that in late 2011, they had tested several alternative metal compositions in anticipation of rising nickel and copper prices. Among the test runs were a small batch of Jefferson nickels struck in a palladium-silver alloy. The test coins, they claimed, had all been destroyed. Yet, here was Charlie's coin, very much intact and undeniably real. Experts estimated that fewer than 20 such coins could exist if more had survived. But no one knew for sure. That mystery added fuel to the frenzy. By the end of that month, the ANA authenticated Charlie's coin, calling it a modern miracle of numismatic history. The first offer came from a European collector, $3 million. Charlie turned it down. Soon, he was fielding calls from investment firms, private collectors, even movie producers. The offers ballooned, $7 million, $12 million. He finally accepted a $21 million deal from a tech entrepreneur who also bought the rights to the story for a planned documentary and streaming series, but even that wasn't the end point. Two more coins appeared, one found by a 12-year-old in Arizona who got it as change at a gas station, and another purchased unknowingly as part of a coin roll from a Denver area bank. Both were authenticated. Both sold for over $25 million at private auction.by. Now, the ghost alloy nickel was a global sensation. Coin grading companies reported record requests for evaluations of 2012 D nickels. YouTube channels dedicated to coin hunting went viral. TikTok videos showing how to weigh and test nickels reached tens of millions of views. Some banks even had to temporarily pause coin roll sales due to demand, and then came the lawsuits that a former Mint employee came forward anonymously, claiming that some of the palladium coins had been deliberately saved from destruction and were slowly being leaked into circulation. He alleged that a small group of insiders had taken the test coins as souvenirs, unaware of their future value. The U.S. Treasury launched an internal investigation. Whistleblower protections were extended. Legal debates erupted over whether these coins, though unauthorized for release, could be legally owned. But the courts ultimately ruled in favor of the finders. If the coin is in circulation and not stolen, it's yours. Collectors rejoiced. The search intensified. Nickel sorting machines were being rented en masse by treasure hunters. Coin conventions began holding ghost alloy challenges to see if anyone could find a fourth authentic specimen. No new ones have surfaced since. But the dream remains alive. Charlie, meanwhile, retired for the second time. He used part of his newfound fortune to fund scholarships at his old high school, donated to the local library, and traveled the country in an RV he named Monticello. He still keeps a 2012 D nickel on a keychain, not the one, of course, but a regular one. Just as a reminder. He's often asked if he thinks more ghost alloy nickels are out there. He always says the same thing with a little smile: I think the world's got a way of hiding little treasures in the most ordinary places. You just have to be looking. So the next time you're counting your change, flipping through a coin roll, or emptying your car's cup holder, take a second look. That nickel you almost tossed away might just be the next multi-million-dollar discovery. You never know when history will drop into your hand, and if you're into stories like these, real stories of mystery, money, and the magic hiding in plain sight, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more. Your next big moment might just be 5 cents away. Next, 2008 D5 cent Jefferson nickels USA coins. Today, in the vast and intricate world of U.S. coin collecting, there are thousands of coins that have captured the attention of collectors over the decades. From rare silver dollars to misstruck pennies, stories abound of people stumbling upon fortunes hidden in plain sight. But none have quite captured the imagination like the case of the 2008 D Jefferson nickel, a humble 5-cent coin that would go on to be the center of one of the most shocking discoveries in American numismatic history. This isn't just about metal and mint marks. It's about mystery, history, and the idea that something as ordinary as a nickel can be worth more than gold, more than diamonds, even more than a fleet of luxury cars. How much more? Try $290 million. It all starts with Eddie Langston, a man who lived a simple life in the quiet suburbs of Albuquerque, New Mexico. He wasn't wealthy, famous, or especially lucky. In fact, he lived paycheck to paycheck, working nights as a janitor at a local community college. But Eddie had a peculiar habit. He collected coins, not as a dealer, not even as an amateur enthusiast, more like a scavenger with a purpose. He liked to believe that every coin had a journey, and by collecting them, he was preserving a small piece of someone else's story. His collection wasn't locked away in some high-end safe or stored in pristine coin flips. It lived in cigar boxes, mason jars, and the occasional sock drawer. One freezing morning in January 2013, Eddie stopped by his usual corner gas station. He bought a cup of burnt coffee, paid in cash, and received a handful of change. Back at home, as he poured the coins into one of his sorting jars, something caught his eye, a nickel that shimmered oddly under the fluorescent light. It had the standard profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse side and Monticello on the reverse, just like any other post-2006 Jefferson nickel. But it felt different. It had a weight that seemed minutely off, a shine that wasn't quite right, and the edges appeared too sharp for a coin that had supposedly been in circulation for nearly 5 years. Eddie, curious but not convinced it was anything special, set it aside. Over the next few weeks, he kept coming back to the coin, examining it under different lighting, weighing it against other nickels, even tapping it on the table to hear the pitch of the metal. Finally, he brought it to a local coin shop. The shop owner gave it a glance and assumed it was a well-preserved 2008 D from the Denver Mint, worth maybe a quarter to the right buyer. But Eddie wasn't satisfied with that answer. There was something deeper about this nickel, something that eluded even experienced eyes. Taking matters into his own hands, Eddie shipped the coin to one of the top coin grading and authentication services in the country. After a couple of nerve-wracking months, he received the coin back along with a report that would change his life forever. The coin was genuine, minted in 2008 in Denver, but it showed anomalies unlike any other 2008 D nickel on record. First, the nickel was struck on an unknown planchet, meaning the metal blank used was not standard issue. Second, microscopic imaging revealed a layered composition that included rare elements such as rhodium and a small trace of iridium, metals not used in U.S. coinage, but the most shocking revelation came when metallurgic analysis revealed a minute radioactive isotope embedded in the alloy, a signature often associated with deep space materials or advanced military equipment. That sparked a wave of conspiracy theories, news reports, and scientific inquiries. Why would a U.S. nickel contain material not available to the general public? Was it a test coin? A mistake? A message? Theories exploded across forums and news outlets. Some believed the coin was the result of a classified military experiment that accidentally ended up in circulation. Others were convinced it was minted on an experimental planchet created during a secret materials research program. A few even suggested the coin had extraterrestrial origins, an idea dismissed by scientists but wildly popular in online communities. As numismatists, metallurgists, and government agencies began poking around the story, it gained traction on television shows, online documentaries, and national media. Collectors began to scour their own stashes, searching desperately for another 2008 D that matched Eddie's coin. Dozens of fakes began appearing online. Scammers tried to cash in on the frenzy. But despite thousands of coins being submitted for analysis, not a single other example surfaced with the same composition or mysterious characteristics. Eddie's coin was unique. A true 1-of-1.in 2015, Eddie was approached by one of the world's premier coin auction houses. They wanted the coin for their headline event in New York City. At first, Eddie was reluctant. To him, the coin was more than money. It was a piece of his personal history. But with encouragement from friends and family, he agreed, if only to see what the world really thought it was worth. The auction night was electric. Television crews, wealthy collectors, museum curators, and even a few shadowy figures from foreign embassies were in attendance. The bidding started at $10,000. It shot up to $100,000 in seconds. Within minutes, the bids passed the $1 million mark, then 5, then 10. And just when it seemed the room might settle, a private bidder from an undisclosed location stunned the audience with a final, jaw-dropping offer, $290 million. Silence fell. The gavel dropped. Sold. The identity of the buyer remains a mystery to this day. Some claim it was a sovereign wealth fund looking to diversify with rare assets. Others believe it was a private collector with ties to government research programs. A few have speculated that the buyer was the U.S. government itself, seeking to quietly retrieve the rogue coin and prevent further scrutiny. Eddie never disclosed who purchased it. He received the funds, relocated to a quiet part of northern Maine, and has lived largely off-grid ever since. Occasionally, he's spotted at coin conventions or donating anonymously to historical preservation causes. As for the 2008 D. Jefferson nickel, now dubbed the Galactic Nickel, by collectors, its legacy continues to ripple through the numismatic world. Some see it as a cautionary tale, an example of how secrets can slip through the cracks of bureaucracy. Others regard it as a symbol of hope, that unimaginable value can be hiding in the smallest and most mundane things. In schools, the story is told as a modern parable about attention to detail. In collector circles, it's a tale of obsession, luck, and the thrill of the hunt, and so, whenever someone digs through their change jar or gets a nickel back at the grocery store, they're not just looking for 5 cents. They're looking for the next anomaly, the next mystery, the next unexpected fortune. Because lightning has struck once, and it could strike again. That if you've enjoyed this wild, true story of the most valuable nickel in American history, don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell icon so you're the first to know when the next unbelievable coin tale drops. Who knows, maybe your pocket change is worth millions. Keep looking. Keep dreaming. Next, 1991 5-cent Jefferson nickels USA coins. Today it started as a whisper. A tale told in the quiet corners of online collector groups and obscure numismatic forums. A story that sounded so outrageous, so beyond belief, that it was immediately dismissed by many as a hoax. But for those who lived and breathed rare coins, who studied dies, planchets, minting anomalies, and historical provenance, this story hit differently. There was something there, beneath the layers of rumor and speculation, that made it impossible to ignore the object of this obsession. A seemingly ordinary 1991 Jefferson nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint. A coin most people would barely glance at as they passed it in change. But this one wasn't ordinary. This one was different. According to the legend, it was unique, not just in its physical anomalies, but in its origin, its path, and ultimately, its unprecedented value. A face value of 5 cents. A market value, in one of the most secretive and high-profile private coin transactions ever recorded, of $240 million. To understand how such a thing could even be possible, you have to go back to the basics. The Jefferson nickel has been in circulation since 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. Designed by artist Felix Schlag, it bore the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, and Monticello, his Virginia estate, on the reverse. Over the decades, slight design modifications were introduced, especially in the early 2000s when the Westward Journey nickel series briefly shifted the imagery. But through most of its existence, including 1991, the design remained largely unchanged. By 1991, billions of Jefferson nickels had been produced. That year alone, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia and Denver struck over 1 billion combined. That's not rare. That's not even uncommon. So how did one of them, just one, come to be worth more than the GDP of some small nations? It all goes back to a single coin. The coin that defied every known standard of minting. The one that, according to those who claim to have held it, should not exist under any circumstances. At first glance, it appeared like any other nickel from that year, Jefferson's face on the front, Monticello on the back. But a closer look revealed a storm of impossible features. The coin reportedly displayed a combination of minting errors that had never before been seen in a single specimen. It had a double die strike, clearly visible on both Jefferson's face and the lettering. But the doubling was not just typical, it was extreme, with sharp shadow-like impressions that made the text appear ghosted. Then there was the alignment issue. The coin had been struck off-center, but not in a way that suggested damage or post-mint tampering. The error was clean, precise, as if done deliberately. The rim was partially missing, exposing the blank planchet beneath, but that wasn't all. The metallic composition was off. Experts who claimed to have tested the coin under non-invasive spectrometry said it did not match the usual 75% copper, 25% nickel composition. Instead, there were traces of gold, silver, and an unidentified alloy that couldn't be matched to any known source used by the U.S. Mint. Some even speculated that the coin had been struck using experimental materials that were being quietly tested for future mintage, materials that were never supposed to leave the lab. And then there were the markings, tiny, almost microscopic inscriptions along the rim and edge. Some believed they were accidental die gouges. Others were convinced they were intentional: symbols, letters, even a coded message embedded into the coin. Numismatists and cryptologists alike examined high-resolution scans and found what appeared to be a pattern, possibly binary, possibly even astrological in nature. Theories abounded. Some suggested the coin had been created as part of a secret commemorative minting, while others ventured deeper into conspiracy, that it had been struck by rogue mint employees during a night shift as part of an unsanctioned experiment. For years, the coin was only spoken of in whispers. A few grainy photos leaked onto obscure message boards. Claims of private viewings were made, though never publicly verified. Then, in 2018, the story exploded when a well-known private collector from Europe allegedly bought the coin for an astronomical $240 million. The seller? An anonymous estate executor representing an old Michigan family. The provenance was vague, but one thing was clear: this was no ordinary eBay coin flip. This was the real deal. That sale turned the coin world upside down. Major auction houses and grading agencies refused to comment. None had authenticated the coin officially, but insiders whispered that behind closed doors, it had been examined, tested, and even scanned under electron microscopes. The results? Sealed under non-disclosure agreements, never to be publicly released, the news sent shockwaves through the community. Suddenly, 1991 nickels were hot. Coin dealers reported record sales of mint-condition nickels from that year. YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting exploded with views, as creators dissected the story and posted videos showing their own 1991 nickels, hoping to find a similar error. TikTok users began flipping through pocket change, sharing their findings, and theorizing wildly. People tore apart piggy banks, raided attic coin jars, and lined up at coin shops with stacks of 5-cent pieces. Everyone wanted to believe. And why not? If one nickel could be worth $240 million, maybe lightning could strike twice, but none matched. The original coin remained elusive. Housed in a private vault, insured for an unspecified sum, rumored to be stored in Europe or perhaps the Middle East. No one knew. The collector who purchased it never came forward. He, or she, became a myth. Just like the coin. Of course, there were the doubters. The skeptics. The ones who said the whole thing was fabricated, a massive marketing stunt, a viral myth designed to drum up interest in coin collecting. They pointed to the lack of verified authentication, the inconsistent photos, the absence of public auction records. They said no one would pay that kind of money for a 5-cent piece, but to those who had held it, touched it, seen the shimmer of its impossible luster with their own eyes, it was real. More than real. It was the rarest of treasures, a coin that transcended metal and mint, history and economy. A true one-of-a-kind artifact, imbued with mystery and wonder. In the aftermath, the legacy of the $240 million nickel only grew. Coin conventions began hosting 1991 nickel challenges, offering cash prizes for the most compelling error coin from that year. Several documentaries chronicled the rise of the legend. One streaming series focused entirely on rare coin mysteries opened its first season with the Jefferson nickel tale, and somewhere, in a safe buried deep underground, that coin rests. Not displayed in a museum. Not publicly honored in any catalog. But hidden. A phantom. A whisper. An icon of numismatic folklore. So next time you're handed a nickel in change, take a second look. You might be holding the most valuable coin in the world, disguised as an everyday piece of metal. And if you find it, if you truly find it, history will never look the same again. That if you're as fascinated by the mysteries hidden in your pocket as we are, be sure to like this story, subscribe for more astonishing true tales from the world of rare coins, and share it with fellow collectors and curious minds. Who knows? The next legendary discovery could be right in your hands.